that point. The operation and maintenance expense for the water district for 2015-16 is $217,867, and that's essentially what you're approving tonight. By virtue of the past bond agreements, the city has already agreed to make debt service payments and any associated reserves, contingency fund payments or anything like that. So the part that gets approved by city council is typically the O&M part of the budget. However, you do have the opportunity to see all of it. I wrote a memo that was on the front part of your packet. I won't read it to you unless you have some specific questions about it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have on the specifics of the expense items. If you have any or want more information, I'll be glad to get it for you. What we give you on the page 1 of the revenue fund, surplus fund, contingency fund, debt service fund, and the Turkey Peak Reservoir fund. Those are all of the funds of the districts. And like I say, essentially that money is city money, and that's where it is located. And historically, the money for Turkey Peak is what the surplus is for. However, we did have a drought this last year that used a significant part of that money. Fortunately, we had it to spend rather than issuing bonds for something like a drought that's didn't happen, but we really didn't need to be paying for that for another 10 years by issuing debt to cover it. So we were fortunate in that light. You have in your packet the debt service costs, but I would like to draw your attention to page 8, which is First Southwest's pro forma of our debt service on the new issuance of bonds. And if you'll note in there that district's total revenue of $2,434,000 is based on the rates that the city has in place prior to the drought contingency rate that was put into effect in January. So there is, at this point in time, there is not going to be a need to raise water rates above what they were prior to the drought contingency rate going into effect to make the payments on these bonds to fund the reserve requirement and the contingency fund requirement. And we will still meet our coverage requirements of using the bond issue documents at 1.25 times revenue. So again, the planning that was done back in 2005-06-07 by getting the rates in effect keep us from having to raise rates for this specific instance. This pro forma that you have should be high. The Water Development Board will not calculate rates until about October the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, so we don't know what our final interest cost is going to be, but this should be a conservative number, and that's what I used for the budget.
Don't have to raise water rates until you start actual construction.
Construction will be a different picture.
Yeah.
And
I just want everybody to know that.
That's 2 or 3 years away, and I have no clue what that might be. A lot of factors will play into what that final rate is. Can answer any questions that anybody has.
Did you say, did I misunderstood what you said? It's trying to, the water rate before the drought is acceptable right now?
Yes.
So the rate that we had before we raised the 60%?
The 60% increase was designed to fund the estimated costs of the construction for
So we're
the
fine
drought
right
contingency. At the time we were calculating that rate, we didn't know what the final construction cost was gonna be. We weren't sure what electricity or actually what the final rental rates were gonna be. Those were all at best guess. Frankly, I pushed for those rates to go into effect last summer rather than waiting until July. Again, if you're renting these things at $400,000 a month, it doesn't take very long to have rates beyond the price of bottled water. And so, but the existing rate before that, what the city has been historically giving to the district or paying to the district of $2,358,000 is adequate.
So, hearing what the mayor said, which I agree with him 100%, and someone said it before, sooner or later, rates are gonna go up.
Yes, sir.
But if we reverse back to the rates before the rate went up, we'd be fine. Is that what you said?
For the water district's part of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now,
For the 17 million.
for the 17 million.
Oh, I understand.
But when
Now,
they
the city-
start construction, there's gonna be,
Oh, I understand that. No, I
The
understand
city-
there's gonna be a rate increase sooner or
Right.
later. But
The
I'm just
city-
saying right now,
And the district both have significant infrastructure needs. And so, you know, any reserves that the city has or the district has can fund those needs potentially.
I think what Scott's saying is that our payment to the water district next year will be adequate to cover our obligation to the water district even after the issuance of these $17 million in bonds. If you look at our overall, water sewer fund budget, it's in the range of $8 million, of which $2.3 million we pay to the water district. So I think what Scott's trying to distinguish here is, not all of our rate obviously goes to, in fact, only about a fourth of it goes to paying the water district for water. And so the remaining parts of that pay other items in the water and sewer budget. So I think that's the distinction
Right.
I think Scott's trying to say is that, the rate that, the pre-drought rate, the rate we had in place prior to January of this year is adequate to cover our obligation to the water district, even after they issue these additional bonds.
so going back to the previous rate doesn't hurt us.
No, it does not.
It does not hurt us.
It does not.
Okay.
Now, if we agree to this, does that lock us in for what's gonna be roughly the other 83 million?
Oh, no. The only thing that you're asking action on tonight is to approve the operating budget for the district. That is a requirement that every year the council has to approve the operating budget. And what Scott is bringing to you tonight, as far as the Turkey Peak aspect of this, the $17 million, is just basically informational for y'all at this point. And that's the next step in that process. I guess in theory, Scott, you could issue those bonds, have construction plans prepared, go out for bid. No one is obligated at that point until, there's debt issued to underwrite a construction contract. So none of this obligates anyone, even the water district, to construction ultimately. Even if they issue those $17 million in bonds, that does not necessarily obligate them to ultimately build a project, as I understand it.
That's correct. And to fund the actual construction of the dam is going to be a complicated process in which I'm sure we're going to use other means necessary, which would be federal grants. Just a straight up loan probably is not something we're gonna be able to do. So there are a lot of federal grants out there where we would try to use as much of that as we could. The Water Development Board has a number of loan programs where you have some assistance. The current $8 million bonds, or current $8 million we have for funding, $2.4 million of that was a grant based on the demographic in mineral wells. And so those kinds of funding mechanisms are gonna have to be used to fund construction down the road. And we'll just have to start on that as soon as it seems practical, to make sure that we obtain as much free money as we can.
So do I have a motion to approve their operating budget for 2015-16?
I move to approve their operating budget for 2015-2016.
I'll second.
Move moved second to approve the operating budget 2015-2016. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6-0.
Thank you all.
Item number 9, page 62, is to discuss water rates.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, at your last meeting, there was a discussion as to reducing the current drought contingency water rate structure and going back to the pre-drought rate structure for our water customers effective January 1 of 2016. Had a conversation with Councilman Reagan, and he had a suggestion on how we might want to approach that going forward. Councilman?
I guess 2 weeks ago, when Mr. Upham asked for some clarification on what part of the discussion we've been having, I guess because we'd all been here so long, it didn't really register in my head that we did not set the effective date and formalize it. What I'm asking is that the council go on ahead and actually say, boom, January 1, the rates go back to their pre-drought rate, period. Not that we come back to the table in January and look at it, no. That we go back, boom. And as part of our keeping word to the citizens. As Mr. Glazer had said, the RO's paid for. The whole point in keeping it to the end of the year was to replenish the water department's working monies that they took the damage on during the drought. January 1, the rates go back to their pre-drought rate. So I would make a motion, well, I can't, you got it.
I think all we have to do is, if nobody disagrees with that, is
The only thing I would disagree with. We don't even talk during the week.
oh yeah.
We don't, yeah. I still think if we made it October 1st, because we're looking at October, November, December, 3 months. We're asking, again, I'm asking for some kind of savings back to the citizens, dealing with the taxes, okay, we're going there. For 3 months, I'm asking to go back to October 1st. They don't see it until their November bill. I'd rather see it October 1st, 2015, instead of January.
And
That's my only comment.
And I go back to what I said at the last meeting. Because of the hit that the water department has taken due to decreased sales. And, I mean, if I can do a really terrible visual, this is pre-drought rates. This was rate hike. Total amount of this that went to the water department, 0. This went to pay for the drought contingency. This, if I had my knife up here, I'd cut it, was the actual amount of money that the water department was taking in because of increased prices, because of restrictions, therefore they had decreased sales. They had to hit their own pocketbooks hard during that time. All I'm asking is we give them the opportunity to replenish themselves so that they're not hurting, so that the water department or Mr. Moran or Mr. Howerton ain't back asking us 6 months from now because they're running $500,000 short. And we still keep our word to the citizens. We still give them relief. Just relief comes on January 1. What better way to start out the new year than your government lowering your rate on something? And Cliff, I'll grant you, the $100 a month, man, I don't use hardly any water. That $100 bill hurts. I understand. But I'm willing to say, I'll take and pay a little bit more for the next few months as a ratepayer to help the water department.
I must
And
not
if I'm
use-
wrong,
I must not use any water, mine's not $100 more, maybe 20.
yeah, nah, the whole bill.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I won't lie, Mayor. I don't look at each column. Because when I walk over there to pay, they don't say, oh, well, you only gotta pay us this column today. It's, yeah, they hit me for the whole thing, so.
Okay, we don't have to take any action,
Well,
if we reach a consensus, we can instruct you to prepare an ordinance for
yeah, just
future
kind of
meeting.
clarify what I believe in our conversation with Councilman Reagan was that if you look on page 6, what the minutes described as the action taken at your last meeting was to leave the water rates at the current rate until January 1, 2016. And that was approved with a 6-to-1 vote. I think what Councilman Reagan, correct me if I'm wrong, was possibly looking for here was some actual formal action by the council to formalize this plan, not wait until January to actually act upon it, but go ahead and get council action sooner rather than later. So that thought in mind, along the lines of what the mayor was just suggesting, was that we could bring before you at the next council meeting an ordinance that would enact this directive here, but put an effective date of January 1, so that is put to rest. The council has acted, and the public can rest assured that as of January 1, that will be effective, the action's already been taken. And Councilman, is that
Yes, sir.
what your
That would satisfy.
recommendation is?
Yes, sir.
I agree with that.
Basically, just formalizing an ordinance form, what y'all agreed to do at your last meeting.
So I don't think we need a motion or anything, just,
You can direct us to do that if that's what you, if that's what your desire.
if nobody has a objection on the council, I'll ask you to please put together an ordinance and making that effective 1 January 2016.
We can do that.
Thank you. Item number 10, page 64, is consider new appointments to the Airport Advisory Board and Board of Adjustment / Building and Standards Commission. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor and City Council members, the Mayor's Committee on Boards and Commissions, that being council members Upham and Underwood, met together immediately after our meeting that we had on August the 25th to look at some applications that we had for the Airport Board and for the Board of Adjustment. And they now would like to bring the recommendation to you that for the Board of Adjustment, Mr. Barry Campbell has applied for a position there as an alternate, and you will find his application in your packet on page 65. And Mr. Campbell has served in a similar capacity in his former home in Bridgewater, New Jersey, and he would like to be considered for that position, and the committee is recommending his appointment to an unexpired term, which will expire on March the 31st of 2017. Further, they looked at applications for the Airport Board, where there is one vacancy that was created with the death of Mr. Bill Eubanks. As far as I can determine, Mr. Eubanks served on the Airport Board since 1979, a service that is very distinctive and should be appreciated. He also served us on the Water Board, so Bill was available and we worked him. The committee wants to recommend that Angelo Spilios be appointed to that unexpired term, which will expire on March the 31st of 2017. As you can see from his application in your packet, he has some aviation background, and they would like to recommend his appointment at this time. If you take these recommendations and take action on them, we will still have one vacancy on the Board of Adjustment.
Discussion? Pleasure of the council.
Move to approve the recommended appointments.
Second.
Been moved second to approve these appointments. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry. I said that wrong. I agreed with everything I did.
So there's no opposing?
No.
No abstentions? Passes 6-0. Anybody got the defibrillator? Item number 11,
Move to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned.
Sorry.
Thank you for.
I was just saying, no.
I didn't get shit. That's what I'm saying tonight.
Sorry.